You can't help thinking that in today's world, the rich man of our parable would be feted for his growth plan. And of course, the landowner, if that's what he was, would have been honored in Jesus' day, respected as a man of standing in the local community. So what's wrong with his decision to build bigger barns? His folly lies, of course, in a spiritual myopia, an inability to see God's world properly and to grasp his own place within it. It just never occurs to him that a bumper harvest is God's blessing on that wider community, might be for them, so that bigger, better barns are an irrelevance. He doesn't imagine for a moment that God is inviting him to share something of his own divine generosity in redistributing this windfall, nor that such an invitation could be the means to his own salvation, his way back into friendship with God and neighbor. So it's not so much what he thinks as what he doesn't think. There's a terrible, perhaps farcical solipsism to this man's inner conversation with his soul. The rather pathetic story he tells himself about his own good fortune has lost the bigger plot. That grand narrative that brought Israel out of Egypt and looks forward to the reign of God's Messiah. If he thinks of himself as a landowner, he has forgotten that the earth is the Lord's and its fullness. But whatever tale he tells himself, he can't escape that wider narrative. In rejection of God's invitation, he falls at death under God's judgment. Maybe it's helpful to reflect on how our entrepreneur might have grown rich towards God, as Luke puts it. The whole episode is clearly part of a wider concern in Luke's gospel with charitable almsgiving to the poor. It's not just that almsgiving is good, whereas taking our ease, eating, drinking, and making merry is wrong. For a start, they aren't wrong. They can be very good indeed. It can be morally virtuous to eat, drink, and be merry at the right time and with the right people. The point is that to share willingly in the distribution of God's bounty for what it is to look at others with something of God's own eyes, to admit their need as well as our need for his care, and their need at our hands. Whether that's to recognize them as fellow Israelites, or as fellow children of the one Father, or simply as neighbors. It's to experience in this way something of God's love for his people, and so to find our place among that people. And of course, they do turn out to be the very people with whom we're called to eat, drink, and be merry, which is one way of thinking about what we do at Mass. So almsgiving, as Luke envisions it, is a form of eye salve, a corrective to our moral sight and storytelling. It relocates us, puts us back in the ceaseless exchange of gifts between the Creator and his creatures. And it does this crucially by opening up the religious imagination. If we go back to our first reading this morning from Ecclesiastes, Ecclesiastes tells us reminds us that we invest absurd amounts of energy in pursuit of the wrong goals and in possession for its own sake. Because like that farmer, we too are held in the grip of some small story about ambition and success. That's one reason why St. Paul urges the Colossians to focus on the figure of Christ reigning in glory at the right hand of the Father. That should be our perspective against which to see everything else. No doubt there's a contemplative and ascetic discipline to this refocusing. For St. Paul, vision and action go hand in hand in a dynamic transformation of the Christian disciple. Through love of Christ, we come to imitate what we love. We recover the divine image within us. We are to grow more Christ-like. And as his humanity knows no discrimination between Greek and Jew, slave and free, so we are drawn into the same freedom from prejudice. Our religious imagination is enlarged. And the Gospels, of course, are themselves outstanding fruit of such a fertile imagination. So when in our world it is so easy to settle for the smaller story, let's look for the courageous vision of St. Paul and look to Christ, who is all and in all.